For the first time in American history, the government's telling us how many people can join us in our private homes for Thanksgiving dinner. I'll explain why it's time to fight back. Also ahead, we'll talk to Representative Jim Jordan about his call for a congressional investigation into the integrity of the 2020 election. It's time for Hold the Line.
Your home sounds safe. Your dining room table at Thanksgiving sounds safe. This is a safe environment. I'll be safe. No, you won't be safe.
Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. You just heard Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York justifying his statewide 10-person cap on Thanksgiving gatherings in private homes. Be afraid! Your dinner table is a potential biohazard. Cuomo's not alone. Similar orders are being implemented in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Illinois, and Wisconsin, among other places. Fortunately, at least for some New Yorkers, Cuomo is now facing a small rebellion from local law enforcement. In a statement posted to Facebook, one New York sheriff's office wrote, quote, "There is no need to hide cars and sneak around during your attempt to gather with family. We are not going to exhaust our limited resources obtaining search warrants and counting the turkey eaters in your house." It's good to see that some in our law enforcement community understand that Americans have rights. In fact, we have a Bill of Rights, a Constitution, rights that are not to be discarded at the first sense that government has a problem. Of course, none of this sits very well with Governor Cuomo, especially what those sheriffs said. Watch.
I don't believe as a law enforcement officer you have a right to pick and choose what laws you will enforce. An EO is a law that has been litigated, right? Well, I don't believe in that law, and therefore I won't enforce it. That is, frankly, frightening to me as an individual, frightening to democracy. It's arrogant, and it violates your constitutional duty.
Ah, yes. Cuomo, the tyrant who's taken emergency powers going on now 9 months, is worried that other people are not respecting the rule of law and the Constitution. We can just call what the sheriffs want to do their discretion, Governor Cuomo, and then it's just fine. Prosecutorial discretion is something that executives use all the time in government. Sorry, the sheriffs will be able to get away with this, and they should. Now, these rules come as COVID-19 cases around the country are increasingly onerous and intrusive. My friends, this is no longer a matter of just masking up in public spaces or social distancing while you're waiting in line at the post office. This is now in our homes. If I had told you a year ago that we would reach a place in this country, just 1 year ago, before last Thanksgiving, that you would have politicians who were telling you, on pain of not just possible fines, but imprisonment, that you would have a limit, an arbitrary number at that, of people who were allowed to be in your home, your own family members for Thanksgiving, you would have said that I was crazy. Anybody would have thought it was crazy. That's where we are right now. We need to look at the reality all around us and understand what is happening. The Bill of Rights is being shredded on a daily basis. The Constitution is no longer considered an impediment to the needs and desires of politicians like Cuomo and Newsom and Whitmer and so many others who are using what are supposed to be temporary emergency powers to create their own one-person legislative branch. They're everything when it comes to the government right now. They get to make all the determinations, what businesses are open, how long, what schools will open, what schools won't. And guess what? They've been wrong. They're not even good at being dictators. They're not even smart at implementing these policies. They are taking away our rights and freedoms, and what do we get in the trade? What do we get in response? More taking away of our rights and freedoms. Just look across the country. Look at the lockdowns. Places with mask mandates for months and months, still having a big surge in cases right now. Places with more lax rules, maybe having a surge, maybe not. There is absolutely nothing to support the continuation of failed government mandates from the past. A government mandate, and this is lost to our collectivist, statist left-wing friends in the Democrat Party. But a government mandate is not the same thing as you as an individual taking precautions for your own health. You don't want to go outside? Don't go outside. You want to stay home? You don't want to go to Thanksgiving? All your choice. What we see happening here are people in positions of authority exceeding their authority because they're violating the Constitution and dictating to you what are the necessary steps you must take to protect yourself at tremendous expense to your economic, emotional, psychological well-being. All of these things. And what's really the health trade-off? Oh, this is going to keep you safe? We've already had cases skyrocketing across the country. While we're still in relative states of lockdown, mask compliance is higher than it's ever been. What's the answer they give you now? Oh, that's right. Wear more masks. Double up on masks. Maybe you need an N95, or you're just not obeying our guidance enough. It's your fault. In fact, Governor Cuomo, the thuggish moron tyrant in charge of New York State, and the single worst, by the results, by the death count, the single worst politician in America, perhaps in the world when it comes to COVID-19 response, recently compared people getting sick with COVID to people who eat too much cheesecake and get fat. That's right, he says it's your fault. We have around 250,000 Americans who have died of this, and Cuomo's mindset is, well, most of them probably had it coming because they didn't mask up enough. Just like people gain weight because they eat too many cookies. This is what he says publicly. And he's worried about sheriffs not respecting the law. Does he really want them to kick in the door and arrest people because they're spending time with their family on a national holiday? What percentage of the people who do that are all healthy? Think about what he's really saying. You'll have 99 out of 100 people that are obeying this mandate who are entirely healthy and fine, and 99 out of 100 people, by the numbers, by the statistics, who get sick with COVID will be fine. But he's going to lock people up? He's going to use the force of the state? This is dangerous. We don't know how people will react if they have law enforcement officers armed coming into their homes and saying, there are 12 of you here and you're only allowed 10. Send Grandma and your Uncle Timmy home. They're not allowed to stay. People might react very poorly to that. They might start to think that there's something tyrannical about these dictates and mandates, and that we as a people have freedoms that are inalienable, not allowed to be transgressed by the government, no matter what they think the need may be. And now we look at the needs that they're telling us we have. They don't even have good plans to keep us safe. We are trading our freedom for health security and getting neither in the bargain. It's time we all understand that. And it's time we push back and we fight. There are some out there, thankfully, who see the insanity of this, who see that this is not about Donald Trump. I did not oppose lockdowns because I supported the president. I opposed lockdowns here in New York City, a Democrat stronghold where I live, because I knew that the science did not back this up, that all of the studies, all of the strategic white papers you could read on pandemic response always said we will not lock down. That's too extreme. Until this year. I oppose this because it's the wrong plan. And it's a violation of our rights. The state cannot keep us all safe. The state cannot keep us all from contracting an aerosolized virus that is in free circulation among millions, hundreds of millions of people in this country. And if they try to give you perfect protection, you're going to see the kind of tyranny that we only thought we would read about in history books in this country. And it's happening right now. Governor Kristi Noem, one of the very few, Governor DeSantis in Florida, another one, that won't go along with this madness. Here's Kristi Noem herself.
There are many states that do have mask mandates in place, and some that do not. But I look at their rate of spread, and the fact is that cases are increasing in many of those states as well. If you look at Wisconsin, they've had a mask mandate since August, and they have a higher rate of spread than the state of South Dakota. You look at Montana, they've had a mask mandate in place since July. Both of those states have higher rates of spread than the state of South Dakota.
What is the answer we get from the statist Democrats? More mandates. Mandate doesn't work. You know what you got to do? Have another one. a more onerous one, a more restrictive one where there's greater penalties. That'll really work. They have taken away our freedoms and they had violated our sacred liberties. We can either say enough and start to push back, or just see how far down the tyrannical rabbit hole they can take us. Those are our options right now. I hope every American, regardless of party, regardless of their feelings on Trump, sees it that way. That's where this country is right now. All right, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan's calling for a congressional investigation into questions about the integrity of the 2020 election. He's going to join us and break it all down right after the break. Fellow patriots, MAGA CBD is a revolutionary American-made product that is safe for work, THC-free, and features patented NASA technology, making it the highest quality CBD oil on the market. Dedicated to providing the purest, most effective products on the market, MAGA CBD provides third-party testing results from industry-leading experts. MAGA CBD is 100% committed to customer satisfaction and product quality. Best of all, 10% of proceeds benefit veterans and first responders. Personally, MAGA CBD has helped me sleep through the night, something that I used to struggle with. You can really feel and taste the difference with their apple pie flavored oil. What CBD product in the market could be more American? MAGA, NASA, and apple pie. It's America at its finest. For your CBD needs, look no further than MAGA CBD. Learn more and order today at magacbd.org and save 10% with promo code BUCK. That's MAGA CBD, Charlie Bravo Delta, CBD.org, promo code BUCK.
In the states that we have indicated in red, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona, we more than double the number of votes needed to overturn the election in terms of provable illegal ballots.
I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it, and we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
Tones of defiance and fortitude today at that press conference where you heard from President Trump's senior legal advisors, his legal team. Many are asking for the evidence to finally show up in court. We want to see what's going on here. And many others also want there to be at least a thorough investigation. Congressman Jim Jordan, for example, and put out a letter. This went to Congressman Nadler. He wrote, "Given your role as leader of a political party that spent 4 years baselessly calling into question the legitimacy of the 2016 election with debunked allegations of Russian collusion, you owe it to all Americans to fully examine allegations of actual election errors and misconduct." Couldn't agree more. We have the man here himself right now to talk to us, Congressman Jim Jordan of the great state of Ohio. Congressman, good to see you, sir.
Good to be with you, Buck.
So what did you make of the primary primary allegations today? And where are you, based on the press conference, and where are you on getting the answers we need to make sure that this election was on the up and up?
Yeah, I mean, the main takeaway is why? Why don't Democrats want to know? What are they afraid of? You know, like we said in our letter to Chairman Nadler and Chairwoman Maloney, you guys spent 4 years on the Russia hoax. You can't spend 4 weeks getting to the bottom of an election where if you'd have told someone, Buck, before Election Day, that we're going to keep, the Republicans are going to keep the Senate, Republicans are going to pick up 12 seats in the House, we're going to maintain all the state legislatures that we have and pick up one in New Hampshire, and President Trump will get 10 million more votes than he got 4 years ago, but he will come up short. If you just said that before the election, people said, no way that that's going to happen. But that's exactly what played out. So all we're saying is, let's take time to investigate. In fact, we've got 25 more days until the Electoral College has to meet. So we got 25 days to look at this with all the irregularities, all the anomalies, all the things we've heard, all the affidavits that have been signed. Why don't we check it out? Let's just check it out. We got court cases happening in all these states. Just this past couple days in Georgia, they, Shazam, they found 5,000 votes that hadn't been counted. And this is 2.5 weeks after the election. So all we're saying is let's let the process play out. Let's let the law play out. Let's follow the Constitution and get to the bottom of what actually happened. on our election.
Congressman, what is your response to all those in the media and also Democrat colleagues in the House and the Senate who are claiming that this is highly irregular, undermines our democracy, and they even use the word coup or close to a coup, I think was the phrase I heard recently. You were describing the process.
Yeah.
Is this all within the process?
Of course it is. Of course it is. There's nothing wrong with asking for a recount, which is happening. There's nothing wrong with asking for an audit. There's nothing wrong to make sure that, you know, the 73 million people who have, when they look at those facts I just talked about, how this played out, they know something doesn't feel right here. And the people who are saying the things you just said, they're the same people who told us, oh, you can trust the Steele dossier. Or they're the same people who said, you don't get to see this anonymous impeachment whistleblower. I never got a chance to cross-examine him or her. I never got a chance to ask them questions. So, but you got to believe what they said. And we're going to impeach a president based on some anonymous whistleblower that worked for Joe Biden and the whole other thing there. They're the same people who all summer, Buck, told us that the rioters and looters in the street were peaceful protesters. So now when they say what they're saying, I don't put a lot of stock in it. What I do put stock in is the allegations that have been brought forward. And let's just figure out if, in fact, they're accurate. Let's investigate. Let's get to the bottom of it.
Can I have you respond to Rudy Giuliani, one of the lawyers, I think really the chief lawyer who was giving the press conference today? Here's what he said about the news media's role in this whole situation. Play it.
There are many more affidavits here. I'd like to read them all to you, but I don't have the time. You should have had the time and energy to go look for them. That's your job. Like it's my job to defend the president and to represent the president. It's your job to read these things and not falsely report that there's no evidence. Do you know how many affidavits we have in the Michigan case? 220 affidavits. They're not all public, but 8 of them are. 4 affiants here, those are people who give affidavits, report an incident that under any other circumstances would have been on the front page of all your newspapers if it didn't involve the hatred that you have, irrational, pathological hatred that you have for the president.
What do you make of what Rudy Giuliani's saying here, Jim?
Well, he's saying to the mainstream press, the same mainstream press that weren't willing to actually look at what the FBI did when they started the whole Trump-Russia investigation, the same mainstream press that pushed the story the Democrats were saying, pushed it out there, kept talking about it, even though there was no truth to it. And then finally, when Rick Grinnell releases the transcript, declassified the transcripts and released them, we find out there was never a proper predicate for that. So the mainstream press fails to do their job most of the time. So that doesn't surprise me that they're not digging into this. They're not going out talking to these people who've signed the affidavits. That's just sort of par for the course for the mainstream press. Remember, throughout the whole Trump-Russia investigation, there were maybe 10, 12 of you all in the press who actually dug into it and figured out what was going on. There were only a handful of us in Congress who dug into it. So I don't see anything different here. That's sort of how these.
I remember interviewing you. I remember coming up to Capitol Hill to sit down with you to talk. And when we were having that conversation, it was Russia collusion is absolutely not a hoax. And anybody who thinks there was anything, and Congressman Jordan, you deserve a lot of credit for staying on that one because as we know, well, thank you, sir. What we know is that at the very beginning of that, what we were told was absolutely opposed to the truth. And they were opposed to getting to the truth as well. Yeah. So with that in mind, I want you to tell me what you think about Sidney Powell's claim here on, now she talks about the software. Sidney Powell has a lot of credibility with people on the right because of what she's done for General Flynn's case recently. Yep. I want to have you just react, and if you want to just tell us what you think about Sidney's assessment so far. Play that clip, guys.
The Dominion itself is utilized in 2,000 jurisdictions in 30 states. It has been uncertifiable in multiple states who realized all the problems that it had, including Texas. Experts have described it across the board, from a Princeton group of 3 professors to experts that we have talked to about its end user vulnerabilities. People can admittedly go in and change whatever they want. They can set the ratio of votes from one thing to another. They can say that a Biden vote counts as 1.25 and a Trump vote counts as 0.75. And those may be the numbers that were actually used here. It's not just the swing states that were affected. The algorithm was likely run across the country.
Congressman, I know that it's still early in this. They're looking at the software and this possibility. Do you have faith, though, that Sidney Powell approaches all of this in good faith and you trust that she's going to get to the bottom of it?
Look, yeah, but here's what I know. it wasn't Republicans who first expressed concerns about the Dominion system. It was Democrats. I mean, it was Senator Elizabeth Warren and other United States senators on the Democrat side of the aisle who sent a letter to the CEO of that company expressing concerns about the credibility and the accuracy of the system. So again, I keep coming back to this. Why don't Democrats want to figure it out? I mean, you're the first ones who raised concerns about the Dominion system. Why don't you want to figure it out? Texas rejected that system in their state, it's my understanding. So the big question is why. I've done lots of congressional investigation, and the why questions typically are the most important because why gets to motive. You know, why, for example, in Pennsylvania, were some counties allowed to have their voters cure their ballots, but voters in other counties in Pennsylvania weren't? Why in some counties in Pennsylvania did they allow a pre-canvass, but in other counties they didn't? Some counties in Pennsylvania had a temporary satellite office set up for people to go register and vote from. Other counties didn't. Why did that happen? Why weren't people allowed to observe the count? You're allowed to by law. Why were they prohibited from observing what was going on? So those why questions are important. And when it comes to Dominion, I think all Sidney Powell's raising is, it was Democrats who first asked the why question on Dominion. So let's figure out what exactly took place in this election relative to that system.
Congressman Jim Jordan, good to see you, sir. Thanks for your time today.
You bet, bud. Take care.
Got a whole lot more coming up. Stay with me. My friends, our constitutional republic has rarely faced the perils we do today. Mob rule, a push for socialism, violence, suppression of freedoms. Edmund Burke said it best, all it takes for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. If you want to help preserve America right now while we still can, join AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. It's the fastest growing conservative group in America. Joining AMAC gives you access to money-saving benefits, cutting-edge news, and a great bi-monthly magazine. But more importantly, AMAC fights for you. A socialist storm is brewing. You can see it coming. If you care about your future the way that I do, join AMAC today. Over 2 million constitutional conservatives like you and me have already joined AMAC. Stand with us by joining right now. Just go to amac.us/buck. That's amac.us/buck. The benefits of AMAC membership are great, but the cause is even greater. Join today. amac.us/buck. More lockdown madness. Cuomo and de Blasio are yet again flexing all that power with unscientific and draconian shutdowns of all New York City public schools. They're doing this because the 7-day rolling average of cases hit an arbitrary 3% threshold. Or did it? This all despite clear statistical data showing that there's no increased risk of COVID spread or fatality from keeping schools open. In fact, the youngest age brackets have the easiest time fighting off the virus and are the least likely to contract a severe form of the illness. It all goes to show these lockdowns are more about control than about public health. Actually, a lot of it's about the teachers' unions. We know this since all the hypocritical Democrats will be sending their own kids to private school as they shut down everyone else's school. Look no further than Governor Newsom of California for that. We'll dive into it all and much more on The Buck Brief. They did it. They shut down schools again in New York. 1.12 million kids. 1.12 million reasons to not shut down schools, but they did it anyway. The largest school district in America. Other places are going to be following suit. Trust me, if they're not already. And when you look at the way they're saying this is justified by numbers, it doesn't add up. Here you go. Here's Governor Cuomo's own numbers. Case positivity chart by region. The state's own data in New York here shows the 7-day average is 2.5%, not 3% for New York City, which is far lower than other parts of the state that have higher percentages that are positive, like Long Island, the Finger Lakes, Western New York. So what this shows is that we have arbitrary numbers, but also arbitrary crunching of the numbers or incorrect crunching of them. It doesn't make sense. They use different scales, different metrics, whether you're talking about Cuomo's numbers at the state level or de Blasio at the city level, and this is playing out across the country. They come up with, whether we're talking about California or Illinois or Maryland, any number of states that have very severe school lockdown policies that go into place, California, you can't send your kids to you can't send your kids to public school. Private school is fine. Who's making these determinations? There's a very clear lesson that should have been learned when Trump and Trump supporters and people on the right in August of this last year were saying, open the schools, kids aren't at risk. And there was all this, oh, you want the children to die, you don't care about them, all this furor from the media. That wasn't true. It was, in fact, the case that children are at very low risk. It still is. It is safe for kids to go to school. We've run the experiment. We've seen the data. They do not die from this disease. Even Nate Silver, a leftist number cruncher from the 538 blog, here he is. I don't get why New York City feels bound to stick by a 3% positivity rule for closing schools when we know more about the virus now, including relatively low rates of transmission in schools. If I were a parent, I'd be furious. It doesn't really transmit in schools. Also, why is that? We know that's true, but all the people that tell you, wear a mask, because they have the answer, why doesn't it transmit in school very much? Somehow it does in bars, it does in restaurants, it doesn't in schools. I'm sure they have some ideas, but do they have any proof? But more importantly here, back to our initial premise about how they're shutting down schools. And get ready, this is coming to your state too. If you live in a red state, you may think you're safe from this. Not if you're in a city in that red state. No way. They're using a 3% overall positivity benchmark to shut down schools. But what's the positivity rate in the schools? In New York, it's 0.23%. So the broader population has a much higher percentage of positive tests than the school population does. So why shut down schools? What possible reason is there for this? If anything, when you shut down schools, you force more adults to have to stay home, stay in the house. Intrafamilial transmission of COVID-19, we've known for a long time, is a very high risk. Being in school is not. So if you do have some small percentage of kids who have COVID, now they're going to be staying at home where perhaps there'll be multi-generational family members present. So they might have grandma and grandpa there. They might have an uncle in his 60s or his 70s who stays in the house with them. And that then poses a real risk. But they don't care about the data. You know what this is? A giveaway to the teachers' unions. Let's just say it. The teachers' unions want their employees to be able, because they really work for the union, not for the kids or the school system. They want them to be able to stay home and get their full pay and do online learning. Yeah, sure. That's really the same as having an actual present human being in a room with you, helping you, teaching you, inspiring you. No, the teachers' unions want to make sure that their people, and as we know, these are big machines for turning out Democrat votes. The teachers' unions want their people getting paid to do the bare minimum. Always the case. Remember, teachers' unions are about jobs for adults, not teaching for children. Even some Democrats have come out saying that this is absurd. Borough president here in New York, Eric Adams, had this to say. Play it.
No, I do not. I believe that when you look at the numbers after approximately over 175,000 tests, the numbers are so small, less than 1/4%, 1% of students and faculty were impacted. I think if we have gotten it right anywhere, we have it right in schools. And I think it's a safe place for our students, and we need to continue their learning. And I believe we need to keep the schools open at this time.
Now, many critics are pointing to other countries which have prioritized restrictions on gyms, bars, and restaurants.
Yeah. Europe has had schools open mostly this whole time. They're not shutting down schools for months on end. Here they're telling us it'll be a few weeks. Why would it only be a few weeks? They're using numbers, benchmarks. We really think that the numbers are going to drop down because we're closing down schools? That makes no sense. There aren't a lot of cases in the school system. So you're going to shut down the schools in the hopes that other cases go down based on your shutdown of schools? It doesn't make sense. Do not forget the very real possibility, some would maybe even say the inevitability of the recognition that we are ruled by morons in this country. That's where we are. If you look at how dangerous it is for kids, here you go. This is CDC data. Death by case fatality and hospitalizations by age bracket 0 to 19. statistically speaking, it's effectively zero. I think there have been one or two possible cases of an under the age of 19-year-old dying, school-age child dying from COVID-19. And we're shutting down schools, putting millions of kids in the precarious position of not learning, development stunted, a lot of cases of child abuse that will not be caught by teachers. That's the most common way that child abuse results in an intervention by the authorities. Teachers see it. It's not going to get caught now. Why? Because Democrats did this before, and they think that locking down is the smart thing to do, even though the data says it's terrible. But that's where we are. Unfortunately, that is the circumstance in which we find ourselves right now. I hope we open up those schools ASAP. When we come back, we'll check in with author and filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza about America's continued fight against the radical left. Stay right there.
Well, the progressives have very good ideas, and the American people agree with the progressive ideas.
If you look at this election, progressive incumbents in swing districts overwhelmingly won re-election. These progressive people, that are calling them progressive ideas or socialist ideas, those ideas won convincing victories across the country. America has spoken. Those are the views that America supports, not this sort of conservative right-wing agenda. That's just not true.
Right. That's just not true? Sonny, what's true is you and your co-host live in an alternate reality if you think the 2020 election was a big win for far-left radical Democrats. There was a red wave throughout the country. Nancy Pelosi knows this. House Democrats know this. The 73 million people who voted for Trump know this. But with the Biden administration potentially taking over the White House in January, how are we going to preserve American capitalism and freedom with this Democrat perhaps in the White House? Filmmaker and best-selling author Dinesh D'Souza has exposed the threat of socialism in his latest movie, Trump Card: Beating Socialism, Corruption, and the Deep State. He joins us now to discuss. Dinesh, always good to see you.
It's a pleasure. Looking forward to it.
So the idea here, the thesis advanced by some of the ladies of The View, which I suppose we do have to take seriously because there are a lot of folks who watch that show for reasons that are completely just stunning to me. But they seem to think that this election was a good thing for the AOC socialist far left wing of the Democrat Party and specifically members of Congress. What do you think?
Well, I mean, they might want to start by putting in a call to AOC, who just said on social media that she's quite depressed about the loss of Democratic seats in the House, that the Republicans are very close to a House majority. And she says this is not just a political defeat for progressives, but a personal defeat for her. So interestingly, she, at least, former bartender though she might be, has the ability to gauge that things are darkening for her in the House. It's not going to be quite as easy to ram things through. And I think the people on The View are living in as you say, they're living in a bubble. And they think that they've won smashing victories, even though Republicans are going to gain probably 12 seats in the House and comfortably hold the Senate.
What do you think a Biden, we'll just fast forward here and we'll assume for our conversation for the moment that Joe Biden does end up taking the White House and is inaugurated in January. Does it turn into a good thing for the socialist wing of the Democrat Party, or is Biden, assuming that there's Republican control at least of the Senate, is Biden essentially caught in nothing but intransigence and the gears of the government? How do you think that plays out?
Well, this depends a lot on the Republican side. If the Republican side tries to make deals with Biden, kind of goes invertebrate, then Biden will be able to roll over the Republicans and make a lot of headway. But if the Republicans do effective block and tackle, which they're fully capable of doing, and I think it's only about time that we deliver to the Democrats kind of what they delivered to Trump over 4 years. They did not for one moment accept his legitimacy. They fought him tooth and nail on everything. They did not normalize the Trump presidency. And I think we should learn from them and do exactly the same to Biden.
What do you think of the top items that the socialist wing of the Democrat Party is going to try to get through in the early stages of a Biden presidency?
they will do two things, both worrisome, but the second more worrisome to me than the first. So the first one is economic confiscation of one sort or another. I think they will go after not only increased marginal tax rates, but they will also probably try to impose some form of a wealth tax or some sort of way of going after people's resources, their wealth, not just their income. I think on the spending side, they will be out of control. And whether it's the Green New Deal, there are all kinds of packages that you can look at, but ultimately fiscal irresponsibility will reach cosmic proportions. But the second theme, which is more worrisome to me, is the attack on our basic civil liberties. And it looks to me, I never thought I'd be living in an America where pretty much all the key elements of the Bill of Rights are now up for question. Our right to free speech, it's threatened. Our right to freedom of conscience and religion, it's jeopardized. Second Amendment right, jeopardized. Fourth Amendment right, unreasonable search and seizure. When they're talking about cops using binoculars to look inside your home, people do essentially to report family members who are violating social distancing. I mean, this basic privacy that courts have held we have in our home, in our car. This is why a cop can't kick in the door and come look for drugs without probable cause. Bottom line of it is our civil liberties are in jeopardy as never before. We don't have organizations like the ACLU is a fraud. They're not going to protect anything. So it's ultimately up to the citizens themselves to be the custodian of these liberties. And it's a troubling prospect.
Dinesh, I also want your sense of where we are now in these continued lawsuits over the various state election outcomes that we've seen so far. A tremendous amount of heat coming from Democrats and the left to stop this. And even some Republicans you're seeing now starting to get a little weak in the knees. Oh, we're better than this. We should abandon Trump in this moment with these legal challenges. What do you make of all this?
Well, there is this Republican tendency to say, oh, you know what, maybe there was a lot of chicanery, but let's get it right the next time. Here's the problem with that reasoning. There never will be a next time. If you do, the way to fix it the next time is to fix it this time. In the same way that the way to fix an Antifa guy who breaks a window is to grab him by the lapels and arrest him. Then his friends are all going to say, hey, not nice to break windows. Let's go back to mom's basement. But if you leave the window broken and you respond with like a strongly worded op-ed on like National Review Online calling for civility, the Antifa guys will break every window in the neighborhood because they count that as success.
Yeah, why is it that civility from certain Republicans toward others always involves surrender, and it involves pretending that what we're doing is somehow going to the courts is uncivil? That never has made sense to me, Dinesh.
Well, I'll go further. I will say that I think that this Republican timorousness, if I can call it that, this weakness, this moral cowardice, is the reason that the left is confident in being so aggressive. Their basic idea is, we'll knock down your monuments. We know that you don't have the guts to knock down ours. We will pack the court because even if you're in control, you'd never dream of packing the court. We'll use the deep state against you because you would never think of using the deep state against us. And now the crowning blow, we'll fix the election and cook the books because you're too stupid to do it or even think about it, or you're too straight-laced to deliver it in kind, and therefore we can go about it because even if you catch us in the act, you don't want to do anything about it.
Hopefully, do you think Trumpism as a movement has maybe put an end, or at least put that mentality on notice, Dinesh?
This is what the left did not count on. They were, in Venezuela, when the right got gypped and the left sort of rigged the election, the right basically decided, let's not fight over it. Let's just move on. And they expected Republicans to do that again this time. But I think Trump has not only shown his own toughness, but he's toughened the spine of the Republican Party. So the bottom line of it is, look, if we lost a fair election, we lost a fair election. But we're not convinced we did. So we're just not going to move on until we're fully satisfied that this vote rigging is not now a systematic part of the process. And everyone who keeps talking about, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, Dinesh, it's a conspiracy. I'm like, listen, is it or is it not true that these voter machines can be rigged? If it is, do you actually want to live in a democracy where you've got these counting mechanisms, but the counting mechanisms are fixed? It's possible to program them to move votes one way or the other. Every illegal vote cancels out a legal vote. So think of the atrocity that is being committed against American democracy if we pretend like these things aren't important. We can say that they're false, but if true, the significance can almost hardly be described.
Dinesh D'Souza, everybody. Dinesh, great to see you. Thanks again. Okay, it's almost time for our daily roundup of left-wing lunacy, but we blow that lunacy out of the sky with the buckshot. It's up next. These days, being prepared for the unknown is more important than ever. I'm sure you've noticed the world we live in is very unpredictable. We could all benefit from something reliable right about now. What could be more reliable than real gold and silver? I'm talking about actual gold and silver that you can hold in your hands. Call the Oxford Gold Group right now. Learn how easy it is to get real gold and silver sent securely directly to your home, or how you can have real gold and silver placed in your IRA or 401k. I've done this, you should too. It's so easy. They'll talk you through your options and make sure you get just the right placement, just the right amount for you at this time. Call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD and ask for your free guide on owning gold and silver. Again, call the Oxford Gold Group right now at 833-600-GOLD. The Oxford Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Call them right now at 833-600-GOLD. One more time, that's 833-600-GOLD. Harvard students are trying to ban Trump officials from campus. A bar in New York City requires COVID testing before you drink their overpriced wine. And rapper 50 Cent makes a startling accusation. It is time for the buckshot. We knew this would happen. That's right, they want to punish people for the crime of working for the previous, not sure that's going to be the case yet, but for the most likely previous administration, the Trump administration. Not allowed to go to Harvard. That's something reserved for Democrats. If you work in a Democrat administration, you can be a straight-up dumbass and you will get a teaching position at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Trust me, I have friends. They'll tell you all about it. True of a lot of places. And if you're a Republican, though, and you work for Donald Trump and his administration, you are supposed to be banned. Harvard graduate students have started a petition to make sure that no one who was a Trump official will be allowed to teach there. They're not allowed. See, Harvard's been overtaken by wokeness, too. These schools are no longer impressive places for intellectual rigor and achievement. Just understand that. These are expensive finishing schools for the elite that use things like diversity and the sense of social engineering that they can pull together as their real reason for existing, right? They don't care about turning out the most brilliant leaders of the future. It's all about making sure that social justice is the ultimate goal. That's what you get at Harvard, all these other places, which is why you have screaming morons who will chase after their professors if they say, hey, maybe kids can wear Halloween costumes and we don't have to worry about them being the same ethnicity as the character in the Halloween costume. Not allowed to do that stuff, right? That was the big fight at Yale. Can't dress up as Pocahontas for Halloween if you're a little kid. I mean, we're talking about 5-year-olds here, folks, right? Can't do that. It's racist. So that was at Yale, but Harvard's got the same thing. These people are completely out of their minds. And this just goes to show you the left understands this. They don't have to have good arguments. They don't have to even have reasonable, good faith people supporting them. What they really have to have is control of institutions. The media, academia, Hollywood, you name it. And that then becomes their force multiplier. So they've got the shrill idiots of the left who will go along with whatever they want, and then they can use those institutions to squeeze, to coerce, to push, to brainwash. Enough in the middle that we have elections that are as close as this one is with Joe Biden. So keep that in mind. Have you had enough annoying COVID restrictions yet? No, of course not. There can never be enough COVID restrictions that are meaningless. Like when they take your temperature, even though a lot of people with COVID don't even run a temperature during their early contagious phase, but you still get the little bloop, bloop, little gun they put up to your head. It's insane. A City Winery or New York City Winery, I don't know what this place, I've actually been to it, I don't remember it, but they will require a $50 on-site COVID-19 test for patrons. So you've got to pay $50 to get a COVID test to sit there. You're going to see more of this, unfortunately. Places that are demanding even more outlandish and outrageous COVID protection measures because there are people out there who think that they're going to be safe from the risk. They need to understand they're not necessarily going to get COVID from the person that's sitting 10 feet away at a table eating dinner. They might get COVID from that one moment that they step onto an elevator and a person who had their mask down pulls it up because they want to look like a nice person that actually obeys the rules, even though they were just breathing out their virus that whole time. That's what ends up happening, which is why mandates don't really work. 50 Cent, best known perhaps for being in the club, he claimed that Lil Wayne, best known for being Lil, was paid to support President Trump ahead of the 2020 election. A scandalous claim, if one has ever been made. So 50 Cent is saying that there were payments made here to Lil Wayne for this. I don't believe this is true at all. I just really felt like talking to you today about 50 Cent so I could go back to that time when I was in college, when you could not go to a club or bar without hearing about It's Your Birthday, Gotta Party Like It's Your Birthday. You know what I'm talking about. You remember that song. And then, who wouldn't enjoy watching Rudy Giuliani laugh at CNN? Play it.
What publication are you with?
CNN.
It's all you need, folks. It's all you need. That should be the response that any sane, patriotic American has from now on. Oh, CNN, that's so cute. You know, the bunch of fraudulent anti-American commies running around there getting paid to undermine everything that's good and decent about this country, also known as CNN. That's it. That's it for Hold the Line with Buck Sexton. It's me. Up next, the No Spin News with Mr. Bill O'Reilly. Shields high.